It's never hard to find universal roots from East Asian cinema, while the endings of South Korean films often take place in the wilderness, with lost people walking or escaping, and Japanese films project the whole society on the trams full of truant juvenile delinquents and tired commuters. Taiwan New Wave films, on the other hand, depicts how people get stabbed to death, dazed and frozen in the streets. To understand the sense of powerlessness and bafflement, we need to take a look at the cultural context of Taiwan New Wave. Under martial law, Taiwanese cinema in the 60s and 70s were restricted by censorship of the nationalist government, dedicated to political purpose, such as showing struggles against communism. While the introduction of democracy enabled young directors such as Edward Yan, Tsai Ming-liang, and Hou Xiaoxian to explore the real life of Taiwanese people, the dramatic transformation of Taiwan from rural and traditional Chinese environments to globalized urban also motivated the directors to portray the whole society. Instead of earlier Taiwan New Wave films exploring the history of Taiwan martial laws, these comparative studies focus on later New Wave films that turn the view to the present and future of Taiwan. Both Taipei Story by Edward Yan in 1985 and Millennium Mambo by Hou Xiaoxian in 2001 portray the turbulence of this island influenced by different cultures such as Japan, China, and the West in search of identity and a stable future, as well as how people wander and get lost in the cities under modernization. Taipei Story is about a couple, Qing and Long, who encounter a relationship crisis due to different worldviews in the 80s Taipei, during which Taiwan is experiencing the rapid changes in economics and politics among the four Asian tigers. Millennium Mambo talks about a party girl Vicky struggling with a toxic relationship with her boyfriend Hao Hao and drifting in the disco clubs in Taipei in the 2000s, at the turn of century when people start to reflect about time, history, and memories. Firstly, both films showcase the social relationship through metropolitan postmodernism, with Taipei Story focusing on space and Millennium Mambo weakening linear time. In Taipei Story, Qing and Long grew up together, but since time has changed, they still find each other quite unfamiliar. They remain silent at home instead of greeting or showing care. Their faces are almost expressionless, and the isolation shots separate the two people. Only in the dark will Qing cry on Long's shoulder, but in the darkness we can only see their backs, which shows the repression of human emotions and isolation of individuals. There are huge differences between their social position and their ideology. Qing works at a real estate company while Long runs a cloth store. Long is immersed in a traditionally patriarchal society and in his own glorious past as a baseball player, yet Qing hopes to start a new life in the US. Yan shows the unbridgeable gap between the two in the beginning of Taipei Story through modern architectural space. Qing and Long are in different rooms while they are talking, and their voices are separated, symbolizing the ineffective communication and their fates being separated by the rooms in the modernity. In Millennium Mambo, Hou employs non-narrative structure. In the beginning of the film, we see Vicky walking through the dim tunnel with a row of fluorescent tubes for 2 minutes, without knowing where and when this takes place. While the repetition of fluorescent tubes and the techno music sets the endlessly repeating rhythm, there is a voiceover of Vicky 10 years later retrospecting about the story in 2001. In the rapidly transforming Taipei, the present will soon become the past, so Hou mixes the past, present, and future, telling the present as if it already becomes the past. This temporality is also shown from the circuitous storytelling of Vicky torn between Hao Hao and Jack. Just like the repetitive disco music, Vicky always fights with Hao Hao, going to Jack for comfort, then going back to Hao Hao. Vicky is stuck in a toxic relationship, alcohol, loud techno music, and ultraviolet in a disco club. Time doesn't matter anymore since memory of the youth is lost and replaced by the repetitive present. Local architectural style with development of Taiwan is transforming from generations to generations, from the traditional Japanese houses left during Japanese colonization in A Brighter Summer Day to the commercialist buildings in the 80s in Taipei Story, then to postmodernist buildings similar to those of the US and Europe in Millennium Mambo. So another aspect of postmodernism in Taiwan New Wave is shown from the metropolitan space constructed by the directors. Films employ master shots to showcase the relationship between individuals and Taipei in a realistic approach. Yan uses long shots in Taipei story to accommodate both the buildings and multiple people, which seem to be tiny and powerless compared to the buildings, to indicate the alienated urban structure in which, as Qing's colleague said, buildings designed by people look all the same and existence of an individual doesn't matter anymore. The urban space connects different characters of the society in a net structure and serves as a thread propelling the story. It is on a crowded street that Long met his former baseball teammate, and it's the bar playing American pop music that brought Long, Qing, and Qing's colleagues, who are from totally different worlds, together. While the isolation shot indicates the separation between people, Yan uses an unusual handheld camera to shoot the physical conflict between Long and Qing's colleagues. Millennium Mambo shows how the youth drift between different cities, such as Keelung, Taipei, and a small town called Yubari in Japan. In Taipei, Vicky aimlessly drifts between the messy rental apartment she lives with Hao Hao, disco clubs, and Jack's comfortable home. The shot keeps a long distance between camera and the crowds to demonstrate the objective nature of the film, showing turbulence of the youth through group image. The quick cut between two modes in a disco club and torpor in an apartment brutally reveals the tragic nature of youth lives. The woods hidden under the seeming exciting activities is the numbness of youth culture littered with shattered skeletons. The sense of torpor is a common emotional structure of Taiwanese people in modernity. Whether in 1980s or in Taiwan in the 2000s, people are still in a state of political and economic instability. Every day is new with newly introduced technologies and media, a job that can be lost anytime and break down a family relationship. The emotional structure is revealed through the room scenes to the fullest extent. Both the room scenes employ dim orange lighting. Instead of warmness, we feel the tiring and numb atmosphere through the alienation between couples who live together and should be quite close. In Taipei Story, Yan uses light sources as a medium for audience to peek and observe the family relationship in Taiwan in the 1980s. The use of light has always been applied to other of his films, such as A Brighter Summer Day, in which audiences get to witness the turbulence of Taiwan in the 1960s through a light source provided by Xiao Sir, a high school student's flashlight that he stole from a film crew. In Millennium Mambo, the cinematographic design of shallow depths of field creates a circumscribed environment in which characters are visually confined. The lack of mobility figuratively symbolizes how the youth is stuck in the repetitive present in modernity. Both films stress the driftness of people and their inability to find an ideal place to rest, which further implies the struggle of Taiwan, a politically and culturally homeless island being influenced by both Japanese and American culture, transforming from a traditional Chinese environment into a more globalized society. A view of back of Qing and her friend lonesomely standing in front of the sweet Qing Fujifilm neon symbolizing the influence of Japanese market and media on Taiwan. With a montage of heavy traffic, the film brings the loneliness of urban modernization to a climax. While modernization makes the city busy and full of colors, people stand wordlessly in the dark with emotions repressed to the fullest extent. The non-diegetic, sorrowful, and slow piano piece maximizes the sense of loneliness, composing an elegy for the 80s. While all the scenes in Taipei from Millennium Mambo are indoor, implying the young people's disconnection from nature and reality, most scenes in Japan are outdoor, showing the sky blue tone contrasted with bright yellow and red neon lighting in disco clubs and the snow symbolizing purity. Ho sets this small town in Japan as a dream place in which Vicky can get away from the endless noise in disco club and toxic relationship with Hao Hao, finding peace in nature. However, snow melts down as soon as the sun comes out. The moment of tranquility is fleeting and vulnerable, and soon hazy memories will be replaced by restlessness, just like Taiwan in the millennium, which is already over 20 years ago. In conclusion, Taiwan New Wave films explore the traumatic past, lost present, and unknown future of Taiwan using storytelling of normal people's daily lives. Employing metropolitan postmodernism, the directors showcase struggles of individuals in social relationships as metaphor of the disorienting and drifting Taiwanese society, with diverse culture wavering between the past and future, the traditional Confucianism to a new ideology in the process of modernity and globalization.